Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives right here on the Super Review Show Network. I am joined by my two incredible friends, Kyle and Mike. What's going on, guys?
Woo!
Yo, what's going on?
Yes,
To
we're hitting it
put
off
our
again
review
as
on.
always. Got to get that review going, and as the title of this episode suggests, today, a recent in light of not having many recent releases in the year 2024, Mike found us a release that we can review that came out recently in the year 2024. So we're going to talk about Firewind's album Stand United. Now, for those of you who watch us live, bear with us. There's no Wikipedia page, so I'm not going to pull up anything specific, but I will pull up the Apple Music page for a second.
Boo.
Boo,
Boo that
Apple
man.
Music.
As you can tell,
Corporate pig.
those
Jeez.
corporate bastards. This album came out on
Spotify.
March 1st. What's that?
Spotify.
Yeah.
Spotify is so much better. Oh my God, I cannot emphasize that enough. Um, so as I am peer pressured into saying I'm going first in this one, for lack of a better
I
word.
love peer pressure.
This peer pressure has
Yes.
been put on to me like nobody's business. But no. So the going into this, when Mike said, "Hey, can we do this album?" I said, "Sure, whatever." Kyle said the same thing. Sure, we're gonna do it. It's funny. So going into Firewind, their most recent release, Stand United. I have to write right up front. I am not the biggest fan of certain types of music unless mainly because I'm not exposed to it enough. I mean, if you open me up to it a little bit more, I'll be more available or open to it as time goes on. But this kind of took me by surprise a little bit, Mike. I'm not gonna lie, you kind of like really surprised me here because when I see the album cover and I see like hear the name Firewind or Stand United, I'm thinking of like a screamo like well, some of our previous podcasts and discussions were on like Asking Alexandria or Bring Me the Horizon. This is not what we got, and which I was those. If you've listened to us any period of time, I was not the biggest fan of the screaming, like you can barely make out what they're saying type of metal. But because that's just how I am. It's my personal opinion. That's just me. You are entitled to your own opinion as well. Don't worry. But this one kind of took me by surprise, there, my good friend. You really struck me struck a unique chord in my body for this one. Um, so, given that I'm going to read off the track list in a second, I'll give up my standout tracks in a second. But so Salvation Day, Stand United, title track, Destiny is Calling, The Power Lies Within, Come Undone, Fallen Angel, Chains, Land of Chaos, Talking in Your Sleep, and Days of Grace. Uh, a solid record at 43 minutes long. And as it says here, it came out March 1st of 2024. Um, I have to say, so this album starts off like, mind you, this is coming from someone who had no idea who this artist was until Mike said we're going to do this. So that being said, though, I have to tell you, I was thoroughly. I enjoy. It's weird. Like I enjoyed what I heard for the most part. The album does take a little bit of a dip towards the middle. Like when we get to tracks like Fallen Angel and Chains, I started to lose. Like I got a slight, not a lot, but a slight album fatigue of like a fatigue of like, oh, we're going to. It's the same kind of progression, same kind of chords here and there. But then it picks up towards the end there with Land of Chaos, Talking in Your Sleep, and Days of Grace. So that was for me. That was my personal experience with this record. But it starts off strong. Salvation Day, really good opening track. I do like the riff on it quite a bit. The opening to it. Stand United. Now listen, for those of you that listen to this period of time, title tracks are my thing. I do love a good title track. This one though, it's good. It's just not what I was expecting. Like when I saw, oh, there's a title track on here, I was like, all right, it kind of reminded me of like when the Foo Fighters released, but here we are. That title track was like, okay, it was like not the greatest. I mean, I was at least first, sure enough, I was drawn to it, but this one I was like, you know what? That one was like, all right, whatever. This one, it was a good title track. It was not what I was expecting it to like. But I wasn't drawn into it as much as I thought it was going to be as much as I'm a title track sucker. For those of you who know me,
Gasp.
I
Gasp. JT didn't like
well,
didn't
I
give
feel
it
like
a
we've hit a
10.
stride recently where this is like the third time in a row that the title track wasn't the favorite for JT.
oh
Yeah.
my god, I think that
That's
might be the case moving forward now. But because
times are changing.
times are
JT's
changing for sure. This
evolving.
this title track was just like, yeah, it was good minus, good mediocre at best. I mean, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great. But Destiny's Calling, but a strong follow up though. It kind of like saved Stand United to an extent there. Power Lies Within. I actually really like this track a lot. It's not I'm at a loss for words here. Sorry. It's not that it's kind of follows in the same pattern as like the previous three tracks, but it still keeps the momentum going. I didn't quite feel like bored at any point up until we got to, let's say, Fallen Angel or Chains. But I will say though, Come Undone. We're about halfway through the record at this point with Come Undone. Actually, this is a really good. I like this track a lot too. But as I said, towards the end of this song here, because this song is 4 minutes and 45 seconds long, and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with long songs to any extent whatsoever. I've said this before. Some of my favorite songs of all time are long songs, but what drives me not crazy necessarily, but just what makes me like lose interest in a song is when it feels a little bit too. When I reach a point in an album where it's like, all right, at this point of the record, I'm like, all right, I've kind of heard that before. I've kind of heard this before, kind of thing. And honestly, I mean, when I got to Come Undone and Fallen Angel, I started to lose a little bit of like, I got the fatigue a little bit of like, oh, it's this again, it's that again, it's the same. I wasn't bored, but I was like, all right, this kind of like same style here, same motion here, kind of thing. But then we get down to Land of Chaos and Talking in Your Sleep. By the way, Talking in Your Sleep is a cover, ladies and gentlemen, of the Romantics from 1980, I think, too. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. And at the moment I heard it, I was like, oh my God, that's the Romantics talking in your sleep in the early 80s. Wow, a heavy metal band covered an 80s like pop song that was huge back then. And the moment I heard the melody, I'm like, what? No way. It's kind of funny. That's what picked it up a little bit and ended it on a very good note with Days of Grace. So overall, I mean, it's not. I would not say this is a bad record. I would not say this is a record that is not. It's just it was out of my comfort zone. But this is like a song, an album that just is very. What's the best way to describe it? It's not for me, but I wouldn't not listen to it again. I would definitely come back to it if the timing was right, and I would, and I listened to it a little bit over and over again. With more listens, I feel like it would grow on me a little bit more. But just listening to it like before we did our stream, from last week and going to this week, I felt very like, it's not my cup of tea, but it wasn't bad at the same time. So overall, I'm giving this album a solid 7 out of 10. I enjoyed this quite a bit, Mike. I'm proud of you. Bravo.
You got it.
It wasn't like the greatest thing I've ever heard. It wasn't like the worst thing I've ever heard, but it was like like a scale of like 1 to 10. I give it a 7 because it's like a good plus for me, if you will. I didn't hate it, but I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. That's why I'm sitting about a 7. Maybe if with more listens, it might go down. Maybe with more listens, it might go up. I'm not sure, but I have to give it more of a listen through more than just the several times, more than the 4 or 5 times I listened to it over the past 4 or 5 days. So, but yeah, this is a very good record by a band that I had never heard of until Mike said, let's do this. So I appreciate Mike for doing that. But I'm very curious to see what actually the man, the myth, Kyle has to say.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's let the villain go next. 'Cause I think let's get that score out of the way.
Whoa. Throwing shade over here.
All right. Yeah. So this is an interesting one for me, actually. When Mike throws out Firewind, immediately I'm like, this is a power metal record. You can tell just one of those bands, you can tell just by the band name. I was pleasantly surprised, though, to see that they were not like in your face, overtly power metal.
Mhm.
I felt more like power metal watered down with elements like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden style, which I appreciated a lot more. That's not to say it doesn't fall into power metal tropes here and there, but it was a type that I enjoyed. Starts off super strong with actually my favorite song on the album, Salvation Day. It's a great opening track. Killer start to the record. It has a fantastic chorus. The guitar solo here is honestly probably my favorite solo on the entire record. It's very nice and melodic while still maintaining that power metal like shredding vibe. That's straight 8 out of 10 there. Stand United. I'm with JT on this one. It's an okay song. It's way too repetitive. If I had to hear Stand United, Ignited, or Stand United, Keep Fighting again. I lose my mind, made me want to not stand united with them on this. We're at a 5 though. It's not a bad song. I'm not going to fault them too much on that. It just got kind of annoying towards the end. Destiny's Calling, another good song. The guitars on the intro here, killer guitar intro, really goes hard. Highlight of the song, but then it kind of drops. Uh, and this is something I've noticed in a lot of aspects of this record is the verses are all pretty lackluster and forgettable. There's not many memorable riffs. There's a couple here and there. They're all pretty like standard by the books riffs. The choruses are pretty, on most of the songs, pretty big choruses. But I feel like the verses in this are just used as a medium to get to that chorus.
That's true.
Like they don't use it as well as they could. Chorus on this one is great. Again, gets like Stand United gets used a bit too much throughout the song, but stay at 7 out of 10. And then The Power Lies Within. I'm not as stoked on this one as JT. It's good. It's a good song. The chorus is good. I just feel like it's a bit more compared to the first 3 on here. I felt like it was a bit more simplistic, and I thought they could have done a bit more with it. Sits at about a 6. Come Undone. This is this is a 7 for me. The lyrics on this one are my favorite on the whole album. I think this is their best in terms of, on this album anyway, their best in terms of storytelling. The lyrics, the meaning of the song, about kind of being like uncertain about the future with war and conflict and the way we view that as a society. It's great. I think it's done very well. It actually has some electronic elements in there that I think are mixed in pretty well. They're not overbearing. They actually work as a nice complement to everything else going on. So we said about a 7 on that one. And like JT, we're in pretty good agreement on this. I feel like this is where the album kind of downturns into just a lot of the same thing over and over with not much to set it apart. Fallen Angel, maybe I'm the only one here, and I'm curious to see what Mike has to say. There's a guitar tone in the beginning that sounds awful. The intro guitar tone is so bad, like you gave a high schooler their first like Boss Metal Zone pedal, and we're like, just turn the gain all the way up. It doesn't sound good, but once the verse kicks in and like the choruses, it sounds fine. So I don't know if that was like a purposefully done thing, but it really fell flat for me. We said about a 6. Chains, it's a 5. It's just middle of the road. It's kind of there. It's unexciting. Not bad. Land of Chaos, chorus is decent. I do like that has a kind of a cool breakdown style bridge. Not like a heavy breakdown, but kind of a groovy little bridge there. That was cool. Sits at about a 6. And then we get to what I would classify as the only misstep of this album. This is a 4. Talking in Your Sleep. Weird, unexpected cover. Didn't expect that when we got to this point of the album. But it doesn't really seem to know what it wants to be. Like at times they're like, all right, we're gonna lean into the pop sensibilities of the cover. But then at other times, like, but we're gonna be heavy. And they go back and forth in a way that doesn't really work. But I think the verses are pretty good. But then there's aspects they try to get into that heavy part where I'm like, no, you didn't have to do that. It was cool when it was just kind of, doing your thing on it. It just, I think more than anything, it feels out of place. Like I feel like it's jarring in its placement on the album. I think as a bonus track, it could have been a cool addition or something like just to give the fans. But I think as a spot on the album and being like the second to last song, it was very jarring. It's a much needed change up, but not in a great way. And then we get to Days of Grace. I like the change here. I like that we finally incorporated some like acoustics in there. It actually has a different feel than some of the other songs. It does miss the mark for me a bit. I think it could have benefited from a bit more energy in there. But I like that the guitar playing, like the lead playing here, is a bit more soulful than it is, like shreddy, like some of the other songs. So overall, 6 out of 10 for that. My biggest issue with the album, at first, I liked the album quite a bit. But after repeated listens, the score just went down a couple times. Just because I felt like there were certain issues, like the biggest to me the drums on this are so simplistic in just about every song that it weighs things down a lot. Like I think that if they just kind of changed some things up on the drums, made it a bit more exciting, it could have been a bit more captivating than it was. At times they sound like they were input completely with like Pro Tools and wasn't live drumming at all, which could just be a product of modern production stylings. It just didn't feel natural. It didn't sound like there was a natural human playing. It just sounded like it was quantized to death, just down to the exact millisecond. The production in general, just I felt like it felt lifeless at times, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I think the production could have benefited from being a bit more beefy and like more natural sounding. This album did a similar thing to what the Mick Mars album we recently talked about did. It falls in a similar place to me, where it's not bad. It's a solid album with solid tracks on it. I feel like it's good background music while I'm doing other things. Would I seek things out on here? Probably not as a whole, but there's like about 3 songs or so that I've added to some playlists and I liked quite a bit. Overall, we sit at a 6 out of 10 here. A lot of just anticlimactic songs. I liked it more than I thought I would going into like a power metal album. So 6 out of 10. Could have been better. Maybe some of their other stuff is better. Curious what Mike has to say on it.
Maybe swap lead singers from Mick Mars and Firewind, see what happens there, because we
I'm
were.
gonna be honest. I think if they did that, the Mick Mars one would be better.
I agree. Yeah, that would actually. I'm curious. Like, I really do wish somebody would like mess with albums more and yeah, not just like you've heard like the Metallica one where someone redid
The
Saint
drums on
Anger
Saint
or
Anger.
whatever. Yeah, like messed with things and um like we were talking about Quedeca originally.
Mhm.
We want to hear some remixes with Quedeca. Yeah, so yeah, I guess it's my turn to go. So yeah, so I have an interesting, kind of history with Firewind. I like listened to them a long time ago and really liked them. And then for some reason I just stopped listening to them completely and went off in a different direction. It might have been when I kind of transitioned into heavier music and kind of forgot to come back when I blended everything back together to kind of like catch up on, where like I left off. But yeah, like I kind of uh, you know, they're from Greece, which is an interesting place to be from when you write this kind of music. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gus G, but he's
Mhm.
been involved with Ozzy. He's been involved with a bunch of different bands as like kind of he's just like he could be a hired gun. He has some real, just chops. I mean, as you can tell
Yep.
with these riffs
One of my
and these.
favorite Ozzy guitar players.
Oh yeah, I mean Gus G's he's just an absolute monster on guitar, and I'm going to see him actually in April, so I'm actually looking forward to that. So, you know, I remember listening to one of the albums in the 2000s, and then like never kind of came back, and then now this is like my return to like getting back into them, and I've listened to a couple of the middle to older albums, and then this album. So that's kind of just to give you the history of my uh, understanding of them and kind of just trying to pick up where I left off. So as I researched, I realized they had 7 lead singers, which is insane. They just went through a ton of lead singers. The guy that originally they had for most of their career, the middle of the career was more my favorite style of power metal vocals and probably less of Kyle's favorite style of metal vocalist. He was more operatic, less gritty. This guy's more gritty, more kind of a little more rough and kind of on the side of like let's say James Hetfield ish
Mhm.
kind of grit with a operatic kind of undertone that doesn't beat the people who are not into power metal to death, which, you know, I am a fan of just dividing music, like straining out the stragglers who are like into it because of certain elements but not others. I'm just like, let's go to 11 on the elements that I know they don't like, and that way we kind of make sure everybody listens to it as like, purely a fan of the kind of genre, but I do enjoy a good uh mixture of different styles, not kind of like Kyle says, travel over some of those tropes and those kinds of repetitive aspects of power metal, which can, there's a lot of like um, melodic leads with shredding over top of the rhythm, and and it can kind of fall on a very flat note, not a lot of dynamics, not a lot of um, different elements that you can pick out. It just kind of gets drowned out by over show of power metal, of all the different elements of power metal. Like, hey, I'm going to show you how I can like play every scale as fast as possible. And like, while that is cool, it also needs direction and kind of structure, and a lot of times it can kind of lose that. So, the songwriting on this is it heads more in the catchy and straightforward approach, the 80s kind of approach more so than a progressive or technical direction. I noticed that kind of early on. Like Kyle was saying, you have your choruses that kick in, big, big catchy choruses with a lot of like initial kind of bridges and like the in-betweens being kind of like you said, a little on the lackluster side. Um, you know, so it's interesting to kind of come across that, like, yeah, we got to get to that chorus, and we're gonna hit that chorus a lot throughout the song, which can, in kind of defense of JT and Kyle's assessment of the album, leave some people kind of feeling a little like it's formulaic uh in how it kind of rushes to that chorus and then kind of does it again and does it again. So kind of starting off with Salvation Day, it's just good rocking riffs that started off. It's got that 80s feel to it. Love the solo, good chorus, pretty straightforward effort. I'd welcome a few more change up of pace and tempo. I would ask for a little more movements and different um, um, come down to a quiet part with maybe a little bit of guitar in it, and then build back up and do some dynamics. And it doesn't feel like they're doing too much of that kind of thing in this album. They're not slowing down and changing the pace and doing some kind of dramatic build and this and that. There's kind of just like the bulldozer's coming, baby, and it's here to just knock you out with the energy. And while I appreciate things like that, I do also appreciate some theatrics, some dynamics, some elements of kind of songwriting that get you excited, that bring you out of like the typical thing and out and into an area of more, kind of unexpected. And that's kind of the key word here. There's a lot of expected on this, more so than I feel like unexpected. And while a lot of people like that as a safe zone, it can tire some people out. 8 out of 10 for me, though. It's right up my alley. Definitely not a home run, but a nice song. And then we get to Stand United. Uh, I love this. One kind of actually reminded me of Megadeth a little bit, with that kind of thrashier kind of you know change of a tempo here. Um, it's got some complexity throughout the song, does well with layering. It's got a good chorus. It is just kind of, it has a nice little groovy breakdown part in it. Solo is amazing. It just repeats the chorus a little too many times. I do agree. Um, and it does kind of fall on their sword a little bit throughout this album with doing that. But still solid song, and I like that it's got the complexity of riffing throughout this song, which I feel like this album did have a little less of that than I actually wanted. More songs like this with its riffing, less of the songs where it just kind of doesn't really allow that Gus G to kind of make some of these riffs a little more lively, and then just kind of on the 80s catchy side than the 80s kind of riffing side. So, but 9 out of 10 for that one. It was actually one of my more liked songs. And then we get to Destiny's Calling, repeats the chorus a little too often, short and catchy. Might have benefited from a little more of different change ups and stuff like that. 7.5 for me. come down to Power Lies Within. This one kind of gave me off a little Metallica feel, that those drums in the beginning with like that, uh that lead into kind of a heavier riff, almost like a Enter Sandman feel. I appreciate the more aggressive vibe here. And that's also another critique I have for this album is I kind of was hoping they might head in a little more of aggressive, heavier direction, with some real kind of breaks and stuff like that. And like I said in that Stand United song, with some of that shredding, not just in a solo, but shredding along the riff, being a little more on the technical side. And they kind of touch on that. They don't really drive that overall. It has more of the 80s catchy kind of feel to it, which is, hey, not a deal breaker, but also kind of left me like hoping for the next one to maybe achieve that. But Power Lies Within had one of my favorite choruses of the album so far, from 1 to 4. I just like that group vocal feel to it. And then we have Come Undone. It's my favorite album favorite track of the album, actually. Just really kicks into gear. Love how they open with that harmonized guitar. Love the layering of those synths and the amongst the guitars. The chorus fantastic. It's just kind of a headbanger with some of those colorful riffing and just layering. I really enjoy the synth layering. Kind of gives it a flowing, flying feel. It's like, I wouldn't say spacey, but I would say soaring would be a good word for it. And then that solo is just shred-tastic. Like, it is literally, of the album, my favorite track so far. And I heard that single, in my initial look in, and I was just like, oh man, it's got some cool, and like I agree with Kyle, the lyrics are very kind of they put things in perspective. They definitely make you think, and they're not cheesy or anything like that. They kind of have a good question to ask yourself. Things can change. Whatever. Like there definitely is some internal kind of soul seeking topic. And then we come to Fallen Angel, another. I do admit here. I will admit this 100%. I do agree with JT. This album has a lot of it hits a lot of the same notes continuously. And where if you're not in this genre of music, you may begin to feel that fatigue of seeing or hearing a lot of similar things. And where I feel less of that problem. I do acknowledge it. It's just there's a lot of elements of this song I personally felt like it took some good change ups and some good little parts. And I do that part in the beginning of Fallen Angel Call is actually done on purpose. It's almost like when a band plays like a song, puts it in like almost like you're listening to on the radio, and then it kicks into like and it I don't know why they did it. It really, like, I agree with you. It has that kind of
Very jarring.
like someone was listening. Yeah, like you're listening to a Speak and Spell.
Mm-hmm.
You remember those for all of our older viewers out there who know what a Speak and Spell is, which if you watched I think there was on Toy Story, possibly. Was there? There might have been. But yeah, I'm old. Anyway, yeah, another banger for me. Good melodic riffing, nice change ups, writing wise, great chorus. I enjoy this song. 9 out of 10 for me. Definitely, I could see where someone might be like, it's like a lot like this and that. But I feel like that song, I really enjoy the elements to it. And then we go to Change, a very similar opening riff to another song that they wrote back in the day called "Falling to Pieces." If anybody has a chance to go back and listen to Falling to Pieces, they both open the same way. And actually, the comments are disabled on their page. And I'm like wondering if people were saying this and eventually just like they're like, all right, I'm done hearing this. Silence, but which, it happens. It happens. You write something and you're like, man, this sounds so good. It reminds me of something. Oh yeah, that's right. I've done this. But like it's still a good song though after that riff is open. It's melancholy feel to it. Awesome chorus. 8.5 out of 10 for me. So then we go to Land of Chaos. this is where I feel like the album kind of really falls off a cliff for me. Land of Chaos was cheesy lyrics, uh, basic metal song. A couple, I do admit, I do agree with Kyle that groovy little break along the way was nice. It's solid, but nothing special. It's not bad. It's just kind of background music, I think. Just kind of it has a good momentum to it. It just maybe doesn't have the energy or like ability to take off and do something that really breaks you out of a feeling of just basic very well. So a 7.5 out of 10. I would even argue it could be a 7 out of 10, but for the sake of like some of the little breaks and some of the elements that I was listening before, it still was able to use them well. And then talking your sleep, nothing special. I do admit completely with or agree with Kyle that it does have a very it doesn't know what it wants to do. This riff is chugging, and then all of a sudden it feels like it kind of dips off a cliff, and it's like um it's doing the elements that the song is known for, and then back to hard, and then you know it it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's I also could have imagined something a lot more um better. And then that brings me to my point of this album feels very short to me. It's 10 songs, which generally I was expecting like 14, 15 songs. I feel like it's on the short side. It's only 45 minutes. Generally, metal bands in this genre of music, especially on the side of the progressive side, which they can dabble in there, the power metal side, kind of possibly be looking at like just shy of an hour or an hour. And I was hoping for more songs of like shred-tastic power metal element kind of stuff. Really felt like they avoided that, and to Kyle's benefit, uh, uh, this they just kind of it was very straightforward and to the point. Um, Days of Grace, actually my least favorite song on the album. Nothing special about this. Kind of plods along. Chorus isn't that great. Vocals aren't anything to call home. It really felt like the cover being so close to that song felt like actually when I was listening to this album first before we even started reviewing it, I got to five or I should say six, and I really those last couple songs there I didn't listen to initially, and then I like came back and started listening to them more separately. So I felt like it was very front loaded, or at least middle loaded, and then kind of died off at the end. Yeah. So all in all, though, very, and I totally agree with Kyle that as I started off as like a 9, and then I was 8.5, and I just as I kept listening, I came down to 8, and I kind of nestled in at 8. And if I'm going to stay true to my taking a half point away for a good or bad thing, if I'm going to stay true to that, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 because it's too short and it does lack some of the power metal stuff that I feel like I wanted to hear from them that they've done in the past and maybe are just not doing as much. Um, so yeah, 7.5 out of 10. I could bump it up to an 8 out of just sheer quality of playing, sheer quality of the overall writing process and catchiness of it. But I feel like I'm sitting on I'll call it a strong 7, so 7.5 to 7 to 8, or to 7.9, I should say. On the overall feeling, still a solid album, addition to their discography. And overall just it's interesting to see a band who's gone through a lot of lineup changes, a lot of different, and it really is kind of um, put into the hands of the man Gus G to kind of be the guy on point with the torch, like saying, "I'm going to see this dream through," whether it has a lot of those familiar faces or not. And that's just the most important thing, is just to kind of continue to live out that dream, and bring the quality of his writing ability and his guitar playing to light, and all the rest of the guys around him that bring their elements to it as well. So yeah, we'll say 7.5 out of 10.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. That's gonna. Anything else you want to say about it? Or are we good?
Yeah, that's it.
I
That's
guess
all we
we're
got.
good. We want to thank you all for tuning in as always. Thank you so much for listening and enjoying our show as always. Kyle, Q&A podcast is back, right? I forget.
Yep, latest episode is out this morning.
Awesome, and he does a great job. Q&A podcast, check them out. They are available on.
Maybe have JT as a guest come on and make a little guest appearance or something. Maybe I'm initiating something that wasn't thought of. I mean, who knows?
Super review show collaboration.
Yeah, a little crossover.
On the screen.
Crossover one day.
Your thumb has been CGI'd out or photoshopped out.
But I want to thank the two gentlemen for doing this podcast with me as always. Kyle and Mike, you guys are outstanding. Thanks so much for this choice, Mike. It was a good, interesting pick, definitely for sure. And I think it was definitely a good album to review, because there's so little albums coming out this year. We had to review something. So, but I appreciate you.
And I think it's just good to bring a light to bands that no one knows. Like, I know, like, the point of this channel is to get viewers with things that people are listening to right now, and by doing that, but I think there is a duty for people who are into music to kind of look through the lesser known avenues of music, and like the corners of the world where things exist. I mean, like, there's always room to experience something new. So yeah, I think that's you got to do a good blending of both the mainstream and the underground, So yeah, I always try to bring that.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you doing that as well. So, was that Kyle?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, I thought you did. Sorry about that.
Nope.
Anyways, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks so much for watching, listening. However you enjoyed us tonight, sound off in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and follow our social media pages as well. And follow Q&A podcast on Instagram as well. They post all the time. Don't worry. But thanks so much for watching, listening. We'll see you guys next week. So stay safe,